All right. Mr. Nikolai Tjongarero, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast, even though we don't know each other all that well. Our families and specifically our dads have a long history together, I think. So yeah, I don't usually introduce my guests like all, but it's Nikolai Tjongarero, aka Okin, which we'll get into as well. We're going to talk a bit about Namibia. We're going to talk a bit about history, maybe. We're going to talk a bit about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about, general life stuff. So introduce yourself, Nikolai, my man.
Yeah, well, my name is Nikolai Tjongarero, or Okin, as most people know me. Currently, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I have been for quite some time. I've been in Bitcoin since 2019, 2020, somewhere around there. I ran a podcast back then known as #FromTheJump. We did 2 seasons. Each season was cut up into certain sections. But so I was the first podcaster from Africa to be paid for my podcast in Bitcoin while people were streaming my podcast. So that's how I literally one of the ways I did Bitcoin. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'm sitting at the bar and like my phone keeps vibrating and people are like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, people are paying me in Bitcoin while they're listening to what I recorded last week. And it was crazy because
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how did they pay? Was it just like as donations or as like support of your podcast or what?
Correct. So like as people listen to your podcast or watch it, back then there's a different podcasting protocol called podcasting 2.0. And basically what happened is the way that podcasting as we understand it today, it all comes from a database, right? Like, so Apple basically has always had that Apple database that everybody pulls from. And the guy that Apple got to help them build that database was Adam Curry. And Adam Curry is actually the first video DJ of MTV. Like, he was that guy standing there, like, that was Adam Curry. And then he's also the godfather of podcasting. So he created podcasting 2.0, which is where any application in the world can pull from this pool of RSS feeds and then monetize. So basically, while instead of people pressing like buttons, they can send you Bitcoin as like a tip to say, hey, I like that piece of content, or I like this entire episode. And then what I did was, since mine was a visual podcast, I just put a QR code at the bottom right and said, hey, if you enjoy the content, feel free to also just, send through Bitcoin to this address. So it took a twofold approach of showing people how to monetize, because I was looking at Spotify, I was looking at iHeart Radio, because just there's a tip. If you want to get on like the Android devices where they're like, hey, Android, play Business Bucks and Backbeats, right? What happens is you have to be on iHeart Radio's actual database, and then you can say, hey, Android, play. Otherwise, you're never gonna get on that system. So like all these little things is what you find out as you go through the monetization cycle. And then I was like, why jump through these hoops when you could just do Bitcoin?
I must say that from a technical point of view, I mean, I'm relatively technically advanced for a legal and finance guy, but for me it was like I personally just am doing what I enjoyed, which was watching people a little bit. I like to have a bit of a visual, at least see what the people look like, and I'm just putting it out on YouTube. But I'm definitely going to put a lightning address somewhere, because if there's any people that want to easily send to my lightning wallet, then you can support the podcast that way. So I'm definitely going to do that. Okay, so that's how you got into Bitcoin, basically through podcasting. Very interesting. But now,
no, that's how I continued. Not how I got in. I got in through Daniel, the guy my brother.
Your brother.
Yeah, he was in Dubai, and I had to send him money via Western Union, and the fees were killing me. So I tweeted about it, and the guy that created Landifa.com, which is the first regulated Bitcoin-only company in Namibia, he was like, just use Bitcoin. And then literally half an hour later, I had sent the Bitcoin to Daniel. And he was like, okay, how did you do that? And the rest is history. And then from there, I was like, how do I do this with podcasting? And then everything just kind of, flew into each
Kind of
other.
flow.
And here we are.
Yeah, we need to have we need to have a bit more of an offline discussion as well. I think we do. But now, just tell me from your perspective, before we
Yeah.
get into Bitcoin and business, tell us from your perspective how we know each other and our families, because I prefer that way than to toot my own story, because this is usually, this is a podcast that I created, but it's for the purpose of people out there listening, for value add, and listening to the people that I have on and what they're doing. It's less about me than anything else.
I hear you, and it's always great to give back in that type of way. It's kind of like showing people a mirror of self and also seeing yourself in it. It's pretty cool. So yeah, the Tjongareros and the Lebowskis go back longer than I was alive, clearly. But back then, during apartheid South Africa, which of course also was apartheid Namibia, that happened. Apartheid just like it spread, and what happened was black people were not able to stand in court for themselves, and people like Anton, like Almo's dad, Anton, what he did was he stood in court for people that were seen as terrorists to get a fair trial. Other people, there were younger lawyers at the time. It's weird to say younger because we're talking about Hartmut Ruppel, them who are not young, but at the time they were younger lawyers.
And he's younger than my dad. So he's
younger than my
dad. About the same.
Those type of guys were the younger lawyers of those ages.
Yeah.
And they were great friends. I mean, there's pictures of all of them during apartheid, as the visits were becoming more frequent with people being able to come back. And one of the most longest standing memories in my life is a story. Can't remember if it was Auntie Nora Shimming Chase or who it was that was telling me the story of the night when all of them were supposed to be killed, which was unfortunately the night that they took your father. And all of them were supposed to meet up for a meeting. And what apparently had happened at some point was it came out that there was going to be a hit on everybody. And phone calls were going around to tell people, hey, stop, don't go to the meeting. And it just didn't get to everybody in time. And that was that is how, knowing that people were willing to kill, to suppress something that could no longer be suppressed. Like to say, hey, we can't even hold on to this ideal of apartheid anymore, but we're still going to go even further. That to me says a lot about what the apartheid government was like, and the regime was entrenched in doing. And it was beyond what they could control. It was more what they wanted to destroy. That is it's something that is actually unimaginable to most.
I'm a little bit older than you, so like we figured out now. But I remember your dad vividly. He was obviously one of the people that were still in Namibia. He wasn't in exile. He was on the ground, and my dad, from when progressing from representing people in court, actually then was one of the first white members to publicly announce. It wasn't the first white member of SWAPO, but probably the second or third. So not many others before that, but publicly announced it, and obviously got a lot of flack for that. Then started building some of the unions, because SWAPO as a party was banned, just like the ANC was banned. And he started mobilizing through unions. Your dad and my dad were on stages numerous times at rallies, usually union-related rallies.
Those pictures are up everywhere.
And my dad. Yeah, I saw your dad and my dad get arrested one time at a peaceful braai, not even any kind of demonstration. Your dad and my dad, come a long way. And both, your dad's now also passed away, and both of them have street names named after them in Namibia. I mean, my grandmother still actually stays in an old age home that's in Daniel Tjongarero Road, which is named after your dad.
Here's the crazy thing. My sister lived like 2 years ago. She stayed in your dad's street like it's where it's
Okay.
named after your dad. Like you see
Inventor.
what I mean? It's just continuously, yeah.
Yeah.
And one inventor.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, and we don't really know each other that well. I know your brother Danny a bit better, and we met through a sort of a Bitcoin group,
Yeah.
that you happen to be in Cape Town, and you know, I mean, it's fate has brought us together.
It really
So
is.
yeah, but now I want to hear a little bit more about your business, because you know, obviously, built on that, you know, that Namibia is obviously a country that I'm always looking at in terms of what's happening there, hoping things are progressing in a good way. And I think what you're doing there with regards to Bitcoin and Bitcoin education, I think is more your angle. But tell us a bit more about that, because that interests me quite a bit, and I'm sure will interest some listeners.
Yeah, basically I was like, when I actually stopped playing around and trying to find the second Bitcoin, and I was like, let me study this thing. Let me find out what it is. Let me read books. Let me try and find out how the code works. Like, what's going on here? And just basically, since I don't really sleep, I'm an insomniac. So I was like, I got 16 hours a day to kill anyway. Let's throw it at this. So yeah, I did that for about two years of intense, just like reading, studying everything. And I was like, okay, I think I have a way for me to help Namibians with this knowledge that I have. Because my whole thing is, why do we have to play catch up to any country, whether it's the US, the UK, South Africa, Nigeria? Why play catch up when we could be leaders, as far as once people understand what we're doing? So I was like, okay, how do we translate my knowledge into, because there was this one guy actually also interviewed me for a podcast, and he came up with this brilliant term where it's not about financial literacy as much as it's about financial fluency. Because if you are able to convey the knowledge in a fluent manner that somebody that doesn't get it gets it, that is what we're actually aiming at. So I started thinking, how can I simplify having these? Because I threw an event and I'm like, yeah, this is what Bitcoin is, and we're there. You know, there's financial people, like literally people that run hedge funds, there's bankers, there's lawyers, there's people that just there like, okay, let's hear what's going on. And it was a long thing. It was on a Saturday. It was like 4 or 5 hours. And at the end of it, I could see people were interested, but they were also mentally tired. Like, this is a lot of information. Correct. So then I was like, over time, how do we bring this and simplify it? And I was like, what is it that people need to know? When e-wallet came into existence, people didn't need to know all the inner workings of how e-wallet works from FNB. They just needed to know, I can send money from my account to your cell phone number, and you don't even need a bank account for it to happen. But you'll need to go to an ATM to go get it. So like that mechanism, knowing, back then I worked for the bank. I worked in FNB in West Bank. Back then, when e-wallet came into Namibia. So I'm like making the correlation, and I'm like, wait a minute, people don't need to know all of it. All they need to know is, how do I accept and how do I earn Bitcoin? Once they know those two things, then you can start building a circular economy around people accepting and spending Bitcoin, because they know now how. So that was all we boiled it down to was, okay, firstly, we can do a quick half an hour, what is Bitcoin, why is Bitcoin? And then we go into how do we accept and earn Bitcoin. That's what we did with Easy Sats initially. But the whole point was, how do I get, because back then Binance, there was no Lightning Network withdrawals on exchanges. You know, it was $300 every transaction fixed. So if I'm trying to get somebody that earns 500 or wants to buy 500 Namibian dollars or 500 Rand worth of Bitcoin, they're only going to get 200 Rand worth of Bitcoin, because the fee from Binance at the time is $300. There's no way I can tell a gardener to save in Bitcoin, or the lady cleaning, you know, the house or the office, or a security guard. None of them are going to do this. But if we could bring that barrier of entry down to 20 Rand or 20 Namibian dollars, that then allows people to say, hey, you know what? That's 4 loose cigarettes. If you're a smoker and you can buy 4 loose cigarettes, you can buy some Bitcoin. And that, as a barrier of entry, is a lot easier for people to come up on. So that's what I started looking for. How can I do that? That's when I found the Azteco vouchers, started working into voucher systems, looking into more of what Lightning is. So what we built up was a company that goes out and finds solutions to make it easier for people to get their Satoshis. And that's how we came to Easy Sets. And that's basically what I do. And then we push education.
So an easy way to acquire it and start saving in it.
So you can easily accept it, store it, even without me
So
being
yeah,
present. That's the whole point, to show you how do you use Bitcoin without an Okin.
yeah. But it sounds like it's not as easy as it would be in even South Africa, to be with exchanges and acquiring it. So where do you see that going, and what's happening in the Namibian side to make it even easier? And what do
Yeah,
you potentially need as well? What type of service providers? Um, Obviously, we want to see other Namibians take up those businesses, not
yeah.
necessarily even South Africans, although I'd stay in South Africa and I have no problem with South Africans. But, Namibianize this whole thing uh,
Correct.
in terms of making it easy on the Bitcoin side.
Well, it's a twofold approach. I mean, Bitcoiners in general are very innovative individuals. They like to figure things out, experiment, see what new ways. So the guys from Trezor, they created. There's another company out in Prague called Vexel, VEXL, and what Vexel is a peer-to-peer marketplace, completely
Okay.
peer-to-peer, where you, as the maker or the buyer, you determine your rates, and it's completely anonymous until you decide to reveal your identities to each other. So what I did was I
Okay.
introduced this about a month ago at one of my events, and I was telling people, look, you don't even need me. You don't forget Easy Sense. You don't have to buy from me. But Vexel also makes it easy to say, not only I have cash, I want Bitcoin, or I want Bitcoin, I have cash, or whatever. You can say I have a product. You can literally say I have a PlayStation 5 and I want to sell it for Bitcoin, and this is how much my rate is. We can
Right.
meet in person at this place, or we can do it online. So all of it is literally how you determine you want to either buy or sell your Bitcoin or sell your goods for Bitcoin. All of that was created and released for free. For free, it's a free and open source project. You can go and use it today, and that's what I want to do with Namibians. Yes, a lot of people are going to make money, but I'd rather it grow organically from a bottom up movement, right, instead of from top down with guys that already have money. And what we did was the whole of May, I've been throwing educationals for free. Trezor Academy, which is the Bitcoin only arm of Trezor, they actually sent me resources, everything. We got a space at CC Hub Namibia. We went up, we got people there for free. We fed them, and we gave them info. The first session was why Bitcoin. Second section, how to use Bitcoin. And third session is, now that you have this info, what can you do with it? People from those sessions have now gone on to say, okay, you know what? I sell secondhand computer equipment for Bitcoin. Other people are, setting up their own smaller communities to say, hey guys, now that you've seen Okin do it and how there's places that accept it, let me take you to that place, buy you a beer using Bitcoin so you can see. And then you can buy Bitcoin with your cash there too. So it's slowly starting to become a thing where the vendors and the users themselves in Namibia are building up the infrastructure that they need, instead of importing infrastructure that might not really, be for a Namibian use case. So that's generally
and build it. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of Bitcoin and being a Bitcoin only, what's your sort of take on that for yourself and generally as well?
Yeah. Well, so back in I thought I was so smart back in 2019, 2020. And I was like, I'm gonna find the next Bitcoin, man. I was teaching myself to trade, which is a very specialized skill. It's not easy to do for anybody. But I went through a lot of stuff. I was invested in a coin called Space Moon or something at one point, and I was like, 31 million of these coins, man. We're gonna make it. We're on it. And I knew guys that were part of the development team. I was like, man, we're here. Like, I'm gonna do this Bitcoin thing, but I'm also gonna and then they rugged and they rugged hard. I literally stole. I think if I were to reinstall Trust Wallet, I still have access to those coins. I can't even send them out. The value is worth absolutely nothing, right? So then I started looking into what are rug pulls and what's going on in the space. And I really started seeing a predatory nature going on. And I was like, how do I safeguard while trying to get Namibians understand Bitcoin's not a scam? Because Namibians were already scammed by people that, were saying, yeah, we can do this. Give us the money and we'll trade your Bitcoin for you, what. So they already got scammed. And I had to first come in and say, hold on, you didn't get scammed by Bitcoin. You got scammed by somebody you gave money to go do Bitcoin things when you weren't supposed to do that. So let's start there.
Under the premise of Bitcoin, using its name, but it wasn't Bitcoin that scammed you.
Not at all. Not at all. It was, you literally sent something to somebody that was showing you a number on a screen and you believed them. And that's what happened. And I had to first start at showing that aspect and then go, okay, this is what Bitcoin is. This is how you can use it without any party. Even if I die tomorrow, you can still use your Bitcoin. Once we get there, then if people want to go out and explore other coins, go right ahead, because you now have a good foundation to move off of. But my problem was too many people were being introduced into what I term shitcoins, right? Because they don't do anything beyond make those that got in early the money that the ones that come in late are paying for. And it's a continuous cycle that I saw. I lost friends to it, and it's the more you tell people just stick with Bitcoin or just study it. Even if you're going to do other stuff, study it, because the more you study it, the more you understand what's going on with the other things. And that's why one of the main reasons I remain Bitcoin only. Another one is I literally run the software. I run full Bitcoin nodes. I have for years now. I run Lightning nodes. I do tech support for Bitcoin companies. So for me, the buy-in, I have a bank account, but it's always empty because I'm always moving stuff over to Bitcoin. I pay for my plane tickets in Bitcoin, my airtime, my burgers, my beer, like everything. I find a way to pay in Bitcoin. And if the people don't take Bitcoin, I pay somebody else at the bar or restaurant that does take Bitcoin, and they just pay my bill. Because then the bar is also like, hold on, other people also do this Bitcoin. Why am I not doing this? What's going on? And I'm like, let me just sit down with you, have a quick conversation for an hour, and I'll show you how to set it up for yourself. And then I'll just come and spend my Bitcoin because I earn Bitcoin. So why not?
Because in a way, you actually just make it easy for yourself. So that's one of your motivators, obviously. It's not to make money out of it directly. And it's to make your life easier because you want to get paid in Bitcoin. You mostly get paid in Bitcoin. You want to keep buying things in Bitcoin rather than having to change it.
If you look at one aspect that I truly believe in life, right, is like you have this thing of the people that want to be not the leader per se, but seen as the leader, right? They want to be like, oh, I pay for everything around here. If you're hungry, I buy you food. If you're thirsty, I buy you a drink, right? They pay for everything at the table. I see it as, why don't I just be selfish and pay for nothing, but show you how to pay for your own? If you pay for your own plate at the table, I don't have to pay for your plate at the table. I get to keep my money, okay? But you also are not starving. You now have a way to show somebody else how they can feed themselves. As we go around doing that, I'll give you an example. At two places that accept Bitcoin in Namibia, right, in Windhoek, Smoky Mare, it was the second place, and Wolf Shack was the first place to accept. At both places, car guards accept Bitcoin. At one of those two places, one of those car guards plays games on his phone, right? Earns Bitcoin while playing Thunder games, right? Like Snake and these games. And then when people want to buy airtime, he sells it to them using that Bitcoin, and he sells it to them at a markup. If they want $5, he sells it for $7. So now he's just made another avenue of income for him, doing something he was already going to do, which was playing games on a phone while he's watching the cars. So it adds value in what can other people do. If there's a child at home that's always playing TV games, he just bought bread and milk. If the cooker shop around the corner accepts bread and milk, that is how you build that circular economy up. Now that works for Bitcoin because you can spend Bitcoin globally. Globally, there's going to be somebody that will take your Bitcoin. I cannot say the same thing for Space Moon and who's coin. I can't. Because they haven't had 14, 15 years of having to fight China and America and Russia at the same time and still coming out on top. They just haven't. So Bitcoin only for me.
Okay. But and I mean, and as you said, Namibia also hasn't been, hasn't been saved. I mean, saved from scams generally. I mean, there's been a lot of scams. That's what I found just talking anything financial with Namibians. There's a lot of forex scams, a lot of Bitcoin scams. So I mean, I do agree with you that to simplify it back to just at least Bitcoin, which is totally decentralized, and meant mainly, or the original idea being to cut out intermediaries and make it truly peer-to-peer, as my understanding, which is still limited after all these years, even though I'm involved in the regulatory side of watching that over the years. But maybe that also is a good segue into my next question in terms of where is Namibia from a regulatory point of view? Because from my perspective, it was kind of on par with the virtual assets bill, I think it was, came out almost a little bit earlier than maybe South Africa. Where is that at the moment? And I mean, have any Bitcoin or also other digital asset companies, because I mean, there are obviously other types of companies in this space, which fall under digital assets or other cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin obviously being on its own, according to Bitcoin Maximus. You get Bitcoin and then you get cryptocurrencies. But where's the regulatory sort of roadmap in Namibia,
it's
roughly,
just the
from
internet.
what you know?
Okay, I think I'm back. Can you hear me, Almo?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the internet just did its Namibia internet thing again. So you were saying the regulatory aspects of where we are with virtual
Roughly,
assets.
yeah. I mean, I know you're not a regulatory expert, but like, where are things roughly? I mean, I kind of followed it a little bit, but there was a virtual assets bill, and I think they opened up applications for companies to get licenses with the Bank of Namibia. So where's that roughly? And are people easily able to operate either Bitcoin only type operations or other types of digital assets? You know, I mean, there are obviously some legitimate projects other than rug pull type coins that are there just to sort of scam people. You know, I personally am involved in some projects like that, which I think have some use case other than Bitcoin. But yeah, I'm obviously also very much in favor of Bitcoin being a large part of this world, and definitely something to focus on first before anything else. But where is Namibia roughly from what you know?
So when they came out with the virtual assets bill, what they did was they actually called for consultations from people within the space. So we went through. Myself, there were a couple of guys that couldn't make it in person, but they were there digitally. And we gave our inputs on what we thought was going to be a rushed process, just because there weren't enough consultations with the people of or the stakeholders within the industry to come forward and say, wait, let's look at certain aspects. So what happened was when South Africa got grey listed last year, then FATF
that was a big
said,
push.
you know what,
because suddenly everyone decides they need to do it now. Yeah.
Correct. So then what literally happened was they asked immediately in about April, they asked for feedback about implementing CBDCs, which I wrote about to them. Luckily, we're not doing that right now. But they also did have a consultation end of April, May, around the Virtual Assets Bill, which is now known as the Virtual Assets Act. It was brought into law end of July of last year. Basically, what the Virtual Assets Act,
yeah, they pushed that thing through.
So what the Virtual Assets Act does is it does see Bitcoin as a bit different than other virtual assets. They're not seen as digital assets. They're seen as virtual assets. So that's what they're named in Namibia. In just because of the way that Bitcoin functions in its totality, no ICOs, no pre-mines, all of those things being taken into account, they are not the same. So they've seen different, but at the same time, when it comes to trying to get like an exchange, like a license for an exchange, what we were saying was, under the current way that the legislation is written, it's going to make it not only difficult, almost impossible for Namibians to open these exchanges unless they have quite a big sum of money, because there's audits and all things that have to happen before you can even start operating as a company. But it also has a lot of market restrictions, in that if you're not a Namibian company trying to come in, it's even, they do lifestyle audits. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's an entire thing where we were like, how are you guys going to enforce this? We understand you don't want people to get scammed, because there were a lot of people scammed, you know, across the board, not just middle income people. I'm talking high income people. There was CBI is still in court right now, and their accounts are frozen by the Bank of Namibia. So there's a lot of, and they have a license. So there's a lot of things and nuances that are still at play when you're talking about, you know, launching something. And even trying to launch a token now in Namibia, there's something called the Initial Token Offering Act, which goes along with the Virtual Assets Act. And in that, it's basically saying, like, to launch a coin in Namibia, the scrutiny you'd have to go through to make sure you don't create a rug pull would make it that almost nobody would launch it unless you're going to do a stable coin, and even if you do a stable coin, what goes along with that is even more scrutiny and all of that, because you have to peg, and for the pegging to stay in place, you'd have to have the liquidities and all of those other things in place. So it's just currently at the point that it's not that it's impossible to get a license to run a virtual assets service provider, which is what you would be running. Yeah. But it's that not everybody needs to. Even what you need to do to qualify in the range of having to, because not everybody, some people are down here, you don't have to. Like a lot of the stuff I do with EasySats are to onboard people that don't have bank accounts, that don't have means of KYC, so they can't get bank accounts. So there is no way for me to KYC somebody. And anyway, the legislation is looking at more of terrorist financing and anti-money laundering. It's not looking at, does Johannes that's just working over here who earns less than like 10K a month want to spend 2K a month on Bitcoin? That's not going to finance any terrorism. So the same way that if you get your car repaired for more than $5,000, the legislation runs the same for all of that. You're not doing something that's untowardly. So again, people can slowly but surely stack it in learning about Bitcoin, do that. When it comes to exchanges, then we start, and I always tell people after the course, and I say, look, you can always do what you want with your money, but understand the pitfalls of what you're doing. If you leave your money on something like an FTX, which was a very reputable exchange, and now the CEO's in jail, everybody's money's gone, like things can happen, and that's why you self-custody and you learn about these different tenants first. So that's legislation-wise, you can operate a company in Namibia. It's not a problem. It's just you will have to jump through the regulatory hoops that are there, and it's an act in place. It's not a bill anymore. Now it's an act. It's law.
It's an act, yeah. Have any people gotten licenses? Is there some indication of who has a license? And is it also clear at what point you need one if you're operating in the space? Because in South Africa, they kind of threw the blanket quite wide, that they declared what they call here crypto asset service providers, is they cast the net quite wide, and basically it's seen as a financial product in terms of our legislation. So if you have a company that does anything with regards to that, you need a license. So they threw it quite wide. I mean, is the net quite wide if you're operating in Namibia, or is it only certain types of companies?
Our legislation was written alongside a Bitcoiner. He was consulted before we even came in. They went to the guy that orange pilled me. It was called Bitcoin Trade Namibia back in 2018. It's now known as Landifa.com. He's had a license since 2018. He's been licensed by the Bank of Namibia. He's gone through the whole steps of making sure everybody else that comes after him doesn't have to go through the same pitfalls, because he's already had these conversations. So our legislation is written in the way that if you are operating P2P, firstly, if Alma wants to buy Bitcoin from Nikolai, fine. No license needed. Okay. You can buy a full Bitcoin from me. It's a peer-to-peer transaction. It is actually written like that in the legislation. Peer-to-peer transactions are seen separate from exchange transactions, which are seen separate from, and also as a virtual asset service provider, you only fall under that under certain stipulations. You have to be A, B, C, D, E to be that. Otherwise, you would fall into ancillary services, like things like helping people set up their own infrastructures. You are now more of a networking
or infrastructure provider.
You are not directly selling or transmitting any of Bitcoin. So in that also, you don't need a license. So all of that is very much it's detailed in our legislation.
Yeah.
I'll send you
that. For instance, I mean, no, I read the bill, and I went through the bill a bit. I didn't obviously delve very deeply into it because there wasn't a push from a business perspective or needing to get a license in Namibia at this point. But obviously, was just kind of keeping up to date. But yeah, definitely, what is interesting is that a lot of types of businesses in this space, because it is technology based, if I can say that. A lot of businesses are actually really just creating the technological infrastructure for people to operate. And yeah, sure, there's a fee for it somewhere along the line. But like, for instance, I think a good example to talk about is some colleagues of ours that started, that helped Pick and Pay accept Bitcoin payments.
Yeah.
Then
Carol,
settle Pick and Pay in rands, because Pick and Pay just want to sell their product. They're not really
Correct.
worried. They want different way people, to have an easy way to pay for their product, and they just want to have the money at the end of the day. And this provider came in the middle and to basically facilitate me and my own Bitcoin to go and pay for it via a Lightning wallet, a Bitcoin Lightning wallet. And then basically they get the Bitcoin. They take the risk of exchanging it in the background. They've got the type of software to do that, whatever, or risk mitigating procedures, and then settle Pick and Pay. Now, from what you said, just very briefly, that kind of person wouldn't need a license in Namibia, because it's essentially all they're doing is providing the technology and the facilitation in the back end so that I can spend my Bitcoin at Pick and Pay. Pick and Pay gets their rands, and this person they're not really dealing with the public. They're not convincing someone to buy Bitcoin. They're not giving them fiat for Bitcoin. They're providing an infrastructure in the back end for this to happen. And that was crazy, because they have applied for a license in Namibia, for instance. I mean, in South Africa, but in Namibia, that type of service doesn't really need a license.
No, so like that's literally what I do. It's one of the services that we give out as easy sets. And the person you're talking about, Carl, I met him in Cape Town in January when I was there at the conference, and we were having a conversation.
I worked with him for a little while to try and help with this regulatory, because this was my view, and we tried to sort of get some answers, but sometimes, and it wasn't even the regulator, it was people that were interpreting the legislation, giving some view on that, and saying, the safer option is to just get a license. But licenses are costly to get, and
Thank you.
You need to create an environment to do business, and not stuff. Especially in Africa, we need to facilitate businesses like that thriving, rather than stopping them in their tracks to need a license, which is quite unnecessary. Because ultimately, regulators, especially in this space, the main thing their main mandate is to make sure that people don't get scammed.
That's what they're supposed to do.
And if you're achieving that in some way without stifling legitimate businesses, that's what you're supposed to be kind of doing, I guess.
No, so in Namibia, like when I spoke to Carl about it, I was very interested in his process of it, and we were talking, and he was like, you don't even need me, Okin, to come to Namibia. Like, you could just do this yourself. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, it's true. I do it now with certain businesses, because they're like, yeah, but I'm a cash business. And I'm like, okay, every Thursday or every second Thursday, I'll come buy the Bitcoin off you in cash. I'll just come to you, and we'll just settle up, and I'll take the Bitcoin back.
Which you can do on a small scale. You can do it on a smaller scale, but I mean,
but with Namibia, you have to remember, what drives a lot of adoption when it comes to businesses is business owners speaking to other business owners. That is how a lot of business adoption happens, is one business owner telling another business owner, hey, do you know how much easier this has made my life? And this guy comes, and if I need the cash, I sell it to him again, and he's shown me how I can sell it to other people. And they now have another stream of income from Bitcoin they're earning, and not Bitcoin they're buying, besides the Bitcoin that they decide to hold. So it all becomes, I always say, why reinvent the wheel and try and recreate what Crypto Connect did, right? Which is Carl's company. Why try and recreate that and recode that when I can just build, essentially remaking the wheel, when I can just build pulley systems, right? With technologies that are already there and how they integrate with each other, make a service available to people to say, hey, this is how everything that you need, here's a Bitcoin stack for you. And for your company, here's another one. And you can integrate everything else that you're doing like this. That service will go way easier for people and businesses to adopt than me trying to go to everybody and say, hey, Bitcoin's great. And like Carl, you said, Pick and Pay just wanted to get their product sold and receive their cash, and so they can, do their whole dividends and everything.
And a customer just wants easy ways to pay on their terms, So like you're a customer that wants to pay in Bitcoin wherever he can, because that's how you earn it. And that's what you want to do. Somebody else, it's a little bit different, but somebody else doesn't want to keep carrying a wallet. So that's why they've had to make a tap and pay, on
Tap
credit
and
cards,
pay
because
is correct.
you want to make it
Got one too.
easier for a person to pay in the way that they want to, and what's easiest for them.
Yeah.
And the merchant or the business owner just wants to receive the money at the end of the day with as little hurdles and as cheaply, I guess, as
Correct.
possible.
Correct.
So
And
is
I mean,
that,
look, at the end of the
can
day,
people basically?
sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, I was saying that. So I mean, is that part of your business? Is also just helping businesses to actually find the easiest way for them to accept Bitcoin and set them up on something like that? I mean, is that part of what EasySats also does?
Yeah, correct. Basically, we sit down. For me, it all starts with a conversation. I need to find out your pain point as a business. For almost 89% of them, it's point of sale machines because they have to rent the point of sale machines. There's always an easy way to start the conversation to get to the bigger pain points. But you have to have an actual conversation, and it's always best in person, unfortunately. To be like, listen, what is it that, XYZ? And for me, like with Wolf Shack, how I got them was what is your worst performing night of the week? They were like Thursdays. I'm like, okay, I will sit here and buy people burgers and beers to argue with me about Bitcoin every Thursday. And we did that for like 3-4 months. And then they were like, you know what? We'll accept Bitcoin every day now. We get it. And like, it just became a relationship that was 2-3 years ago. Now they pay certain of their providers like lemons and stuff. They pay for that in Bitcoin because the lemon provider wants Bitcoin. Wow. So it literally isn't even a thing of people not wanting to pay a cost, because there's costs anyway. In Namibia, you buy airtime, there's VAT immediately. If you buy $5, you get $4 something. You don't get the full $5. It's always a cost. So we don't actually mind about the cost. The question is, what do I get for the cost? And for a lot of people, like you said, our legislation allows for ancillary services. This that I'm doing, that's totally an ancillary. I am facilitating to make sure you can do it. But I'm not actually doing it. You're doing it. So it's just an add-on service. No license. If Carl was here, if he started Crypto Connect in Namibia, he would have never needed a license for it. Till today, he wouldn't need a license for it.
Yeah, it was called Crypto Convert. It's now called Money Badger. So that's,
is it called Money Badger now?
Free plug. It's called Money Badger. They changed it. Yeah. But I haven't spoken to Carl for a while.
But even with all you guys' regulatory hurdles and all the barriers that they put up, South Africans are insanely innovative, okay, and resilient. I mean, I tweeted out just one tweet saying, I love Bitcoin, but how do we get my people in the village to use it when there's no internet access and they don't have smartphones? And then Kokatso from Pretoria was like, give me 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, he was like, here's Machankura. It's in 8 countries. You can use USSD codes. Yeah. You don't need a smartphone. Like, so South Africans, it's not maybe a good idea to strangle them with regulation, because they're just going to come up with another way to do this. Like, so, yeah.
But I think that's the thing. Unfortunately, our regulators often, what they've done is they've actually what they've really caused is a lot of South African innovators, technology innovators, just move their IP across to somewhere else and do it in another country. And South Africa's economy isn't getting the ultimate true benefit of it. And because of something as simple as exchange controls and holding on to this exchange controls brought into place because of apartheid. Now because they can't run they can't run the country properly and are corrupt. They're worried that so much money will leave again, and they've kept it in place. But it's an apartheid. And Namibia also has it still, but I found that they're a little bit more flexible when it comes to exchange control stuff. But all it has done is just ensure that innovation just moves to some other jurisdiction. And Namibia, I think, ultimately, and this is a thing that I've always tried to find is they've been a little bit more accommodating with that. So I've encouraged people to start businesses in Namibia because you can operate there sometimes a little bit more easily, because although there are regulators and sometimes also still a bit bureaucratic, often they have gotten good advice, like in this case, in terms of how to ancillary services. It's a great one, because I think half of the businesses in South Africa that have asked for licensing would be ancillary services. Because ultimately it's technology, man. It's just really technology.
It's tech, bro. Like, and the more that people realize that is just what it is, it's tech that you are helping people use. And the whole point of this tech was it was created in a way that the people can use it themselves. They don't need you, like, to be Apple and be Microsoft to keep doing that. They don't need you to do that. Because it was built like that, it makes it easier for us to do that. And you're right, Namibia is, even though we do have our own problems when it comes to ease of doing business and such, it is still easier to maintain I would say, a tech company, because again, you can always, it's tech, it doesn't have to be inside Namibia all the time. As you build out, especially products and things. I mean, I'm busy building out a few products that are not just Bitcoin based, mostly Bitcoin focused, but more sovereignty and freedom of technology based. But yeah, I mean, we might not have all the resources South Africa does, but we don't have all the problems South Africa does have either.
Yeah, no, for sure. So tell me a bit about just generally sort of growing up and your philosophy in terms of money and how you were brought up with money. You stumbled onto Bitcoin, which is obviously a form of money, but in terms of your own personal philosophy around sort of just general financial education and yourself and how you apply that in your own life. You're obviously a business owner. I've always found that business owners, especially young businesses, not you necessarily you being young, but early stage business owners, their finances are very much wrapped up into their business, and they don't always think about their own sort of future and maybe thinking ahead of when you are unable to work. I don't quite believe in retirement. I think it's an old concept in many ways. I think the only thing that we need to worry about is being able to have the health to carry on doing stuff, which will create payment of some sort. I don't want to necessarily say money, but Bitcoin could be money. So just in terms of how were you taught, how did you grow up, and what's your sort of philosophy on just generally about money, savings, investments, all of that stuff?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, like you said, I am a lot younger than my older brother, like got a 7-year gap. So when my father passed away, it was 97. At the time, I was about 10 years old. Yeah, 9, 10 years old.
It's young. It's like how old I was when my father got killed.
Exactly. And for me, the thing was, everything gets thrown into disarray. You don't know what's going on. You're a kid. All of that happens. But my mom has always been a very strong point in my life, especially when it comes to finances. Like, why do you need the money? What is it? What are you gonna do with it? But I came to find out later on, like, she was always like that. Like, even with my dad, she'd be like, okay, here's the money to go buy bread. You're not getting any more because you're going to give it to people and we need money. And so it's always been a thing of do not waste money. Like, have fun. Go out and enjoy yourself, but don't waste money. Don't just spend to spend. Now, of course, as you grow up, you have uncles, brothers, what, but you don't really have that father that's there, to just always smack you on the hand every now and then. That's just keeping that eye. So you also do stupid things. I remember the one time Frank Fredericks sat me down and he was like, listen, all I need you to do is save $100 a month, just $100 a month. That's all you have to do. Yeah. And like, even at the time, because I was always somebody that very young on, I'm not shy about work. So when all my friends were like getting pocket money, like I was one of those dumb kids that stole like $100 out of my mom's purse. And then like, she was like, I'm never giving you money again. I was like, it's fine, right? And I was like, what can I do? And I'm sitting at home and I'm watching Daniel and his friends pull up with the cars. And I'm like, this was the time everybody had chrome rims. And I'm like, $10 a rim, I'll make you see yourself in your room. And I made money. Like, it's a freaking 11, 12-year-old with shining rims when guys would be having barbecues at their friends' houses, and I'd just get that cash. And then I'd go out with my friends. So I worked at Wine Bar when Dave Smart still owned it, and then just as for me, work has not only been a way of making money, but also like keeping, busy and learning skills. I like learning skills. If I didn't know how to do something and I find a way how to learn how to do it, I'm going to do that. So all that added up. And then over time, you get to university and then money just doesn't make sense. and then and then you get your first job. My first real job was literally I got it off of just putting two pictures together on Photoshop and then going with that to the job interview and being like, this is what I make. What is it you need me to do? I need money. You need somebody to work. And yeah, that was my first job at South Africa 365 back in the day. That was in Woodstock. I worked there for almost 10 years. It was crazy. They paid me good money for the work I did, and I learned a lot on the job. And then from that, because it was Cape Town and I'm an artist, I'm a poet by profession, well, by profession for like ever. And then I was part of Black, or I'm still part of Black Walker Nights. You know, we were signed to a record label in Cape Town. So all of that, I knew a lot of creatives around the scene. So I didn't pay to go into parties. So my money was literally for me. Like I'm staying with my sister that's also now back from the UK, from her studies. So now I'm just there. I'm not paying for rent. I'm earning money. So I'm just putting away, you know, here for parties, what. And then as time went on, I went to go do my master's in China. I sold my car. I was like, I don't need this thing. So I'm going to take this 90K. I'm going to China. And I went to go do my MBA in China. That really taught me more about money than anything before Bitcoin. Because like how Chinese people use money is as a tool. They don't worship it. It's a tool. That's its goal, is to make life better. It's not to like do other weird things with. So I learned a lot about how to utilize money and how to see money from an aspect of people that don't always want to put money in the bank because banks refuse to give you your money. You know, you hear about stuff like that in fucking China. So yeah, I was when I came back, I already had a thing of like, whatever I earn, I need to put away, like it's not mine, like it's the company's. So for as a, like you say, a young business owner, which is very true, EasyStats is now in its second, third year of existence, even though I've been doing everything for 5 years. At the beginning, it was that everything was one bundle of my Bitcoin, EasyStats Bitcoin, my cash is going everywhere, and I don't have cash now. And then I was like, you know what? The best way to do this is whatever EasyStats earns is EasyStats. And I have another job that and other smaller things I can do here and there to fill up my week that earn me either fiat or Bitcoin for various companies. Because, you know, you add skills to your toolbox and then you just monetize those skills. And that's what I've been blessed enough to do. And I earn enough to, you know, feed myself, feed my puppies, pay for electricity at home, do all those things, but also not have to have a boss per se, and still let EasyStats do its thing and accumulate. So I would say the best thing that I've learned was to separate your money by how you earn. If it's earned through your company, let it be the company's funds. But you can earn money somewhere else. You can do other things. You can consult. You can speak on stages. You can get paid.
But don't you think a business should also eventually be, for it to show some success, it's to be able to also pay its owner something?
Yeah, it has to.
Yeah.
It has to. But this is the problem is most entrepreneurs don't step away from being the founder. Right? You can be the founder, but you can't always be the holding on person. Like you have to get teammates. And now I've started to get teammates in where I can say, hey, you can take care of the education thing. You can help me with this thing, because like the more messengers you have, the further the message can go and the stronger the message is. And that's where I feel a lot of people falter, is by saying, no, it's my baby. Bro, the baby's got to learn to walk, you know, at some point. And as you say, it has to sustain itself to do that. You can't keep pumping money into it.
Yeah. And tell me, just regardless of how you save it now, because you'd have one way, or probably would be Bitcoin, what would you say is a good percentage that people should save for themselves, regardless of how they're now making the money?
Oh, I would say as much as you can afford. Like if you can live off of 30%, live off of 30% and save the 70.
And save
there'll 70. Be a time. Save the 70, live off the 30% for 6 months, and just watch how everything. Because for me, Bitcoin was great about a financial thing, but it changed my way of looking at time frames. Right? It gave me a longer time frame of, I want to be here in 20 years to be able to give my nieces the Bitcoin I've been stacking for them on their 18th birthdays and be like, hey, this is yours. You know, like, here's your keys. Go forth and be prosperous. That's yours. Nobody else can take it. Like that for me is something I want to see. Now, to do that, I have to take care of my body. which means I gotta eat better. I gotta work out. So my lifestyle changed. Like when I came back from
But
China,
also, if
I
you
was
want to
100.
give them something, you got to use less of it.
Yeah. But that's why you gotta earn it again.
Yeah.
Whatever you like, my spending isn't theirs. Their one is
Yeah,
they
yeah,
get
yeah.
theirs when they do. But like, it's always the way of making sure you've got a structure of how you want to move forward. And before, I didn't have one. Before Bitcoin, I just knew, look, we're gonna make money. We're gonna make this. I got a great idea here. It's gonna make cash. I got this I can do. Voiceovers are making money for me. What's doing what? But when COVID hit, all of that went out the window, and you sitting at square one with only the equipment in your studio saying, and now nobody wants voiceovers, bro. Like, we can't leave the house. How do we eat? So you have to pivot. You have to be able to pivot and innovate with the tool sets that you have. And I'd say people should.
So a plan's important. You've got to have a plan for yourself.
Yeah, and for your money should make you money. If your money is just, if you're just saving money and putting it in the bank, that is not saving. That is losing value of your money. Because every month it's in the bank charges you a fee. It's not making you money. It's just you're just getting charged. So employ your money, whether you're investing in small companies, cooker shops, whatever. Find things that have high turnover rates to help generate a sustainable. Like for me, the plan is sustainability, right? So find something that pays for your petrol money. Then find something else that pays for your groceries. Then find some, and then do those different things so that even if this thing stops, the lights at home ain't off, the water's still paid for. Okay, but we just have to find something else to get us bread. Like you make a safety net in that sense, because there's no one single point of failure. And in that is how you should look at your money. Where can I put it to bring me back a return, or at least not make me a loss? Feed me at least. That's generally.
That's great. That's some awesome insights, man. Okay. Awesome insights. I think anyone listening to this would definitely think about what you said. I couldn't have said it better myself, but also, we all have our different experiences as well. Correct. I do think that what you said about thinking about how to make money or how to make it work for you, definitely also creates that thing around finding ways to, if you're not coming out with the money that you have, or you're not able to save much, don't think of a scarcity scenario. Think of how you can make more. Because I think often in financial advice and financial literacy, yes, we talk about, okay, you've got to make money and then you've got to save at least 10, 15% at minimum. Like, and it was great when you said that if you can, and you can live off 30% for a while, then you can save 70. You shouldn't have those numbers, but also not to only think about it in that way. If you're struggling to save right now and you can only save, or you can't save, or you've got too many expenses, think of ways to make more money. That's the other plan. That's the other option. Think of ways to make more money, and I'm sure you can help them find ways to make money via Bitcoin. So not just its value, but just in terms of how you can actually earn it, because that's part of your education. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, tell us more about what you do in Namibia. Like, as I said, this is our first sort of proper conversation, and it's online, and we're putting it out on a podcast. But what are you up to in Namibia? I mean, you said you've been a poet most of your life.
Like, so I'll give you an example. It's so, like, my mind's very scatterbrained because I do so many weird things. I wake up, I'm like, let's try this one out, right? So as a musician, when I got into Bitcoin and I went through the podcasting 2.0 part, and I was like, okay, I can monetize my podcast. How are we going to do this with music? Because I know a lot of great artists, but they're out on Bandcamp, they're on Spotify, but they're not making money, right? I told Spotify once I read the terms and conditions. Once I read the terms and conditions of Spotify, I told them, take my entire podcast off. I'm not playing that game with you, right? Because nobody reads terms and conditions. I enjoy reading terms and conditions. I really do. I'm like, no, I'm not playing this game. So for me, the thing was, when I found podcasting 2.0 and it evolved, because that was, again, 3 years ago, what you have now is things like the Fountain app or Wavelake, where you can literally upload all of your old music or podcasts, right? Give people a link. And if they feel they want to boost or send you a donation for this the same way you would on Bandcamp, they can do on these platforms. Now, what happens, here's the crazy part is, when you upload the music, or like with me, I uploaded all of Black Vulcanite's music, right? What I had to do was I had to force every member, which is it's two other members, right? Which was, one's in Germany and the other one doesn't pick up his phone. So it wasn't that easy. And also the two producers, one of the producers that has always mixed and mastered our stuff, and then one of the guys that was already on Wavelake. All of them, I literally made the splits myself. I was like, okay, you get so much, you get. I had WhatsApp group. I was like, guys, everybody cool with these splits? Cool. Uploaded everything. From there onwards, whenever it gets paid, everybody gets paid. There is no, bro, where's my payment for this month? Where's what? We don't have to be in the same country or continent for this to happen, right? Which again adds a value for value aspect. And for me, that's what this is all about. If you want to, because there's going to be a point in time where I always tell people, right now I'm showing you how you can earn Bitcoin. But there's going to be a point in time where people are going to, because people will say, what, you want to buy Bitcoin with Namibian dollars or with Rand? No, I don't want that. Give me land. Give me something else that's value. Like, this thing it's like going to somebody and saying, yo, give me Bitcoin for Zimbabwean dollars right now. They're not going to take the Zimbabwean dollars for Bitcoin. They're just not. It doesn't matter how much you give them. So that's going to be a reality in many countries. You're going to have to find skills that are valuable enough that people are going to want to pay you for that value. And that they're going to use to pay you is going to be the hardest money that you can find right now, and that's Bitcoin. So it's about showing people how to upskill themselves to be valuable to society so that people want to give you value, because there's not going to be charlatan things when there's no, the US dollar is in trouble. So it's difficult for a lot of people to continue what they were doing before under what might come as a system now. So you're going to have to upskill. And that's what I try to show people is, how do you upskill? What can you do that somebody would want to pay you value for?
It's been great talking to you, man. Yeah, I mean, is there anything else that you want to let everyone know about that you do point them to? I mean, in terms of what you do apart from EasySat.
Yeah, I mean, I also own Bitcoin Mining Namibia, BTC Mining Namibia, where I help people bring in miners for themselves and companies and stuff like that as well. Because again, I was in China, so it was easier for me to contact all the suppliers I had there and be like, hey, you guys do miners? And they're like, yes, we do. And I was like, okay. So I started bringing them in. Yeah, so I do that as well for people. And then, we just generally are trying to bring technological advancements that people are either too scared to bring to Namibia or don't know how. And if as EasySats we stumble across it and it has a use case in Namibia, we want to make sure people don't just have to play catch up in 5 years when they could have learned right now how to utilize that for themselves.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But other than that, you can find me
anyway.
Yeah, you can find me everywhere as Okin_17. It's the same handle. Almo's great. So like follow Almo wherever he is and share this podcast so people know. And hopefully from this, Almo will get you on a podcasting 2.0 standard so you can get some Bitcoin streamed to you for your podcast.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you about that. Because I've got all the old recordings and can also put it out somewhere else. But definitely, man, it's been so great chatting to you. And if there's anything else that we think would be valuable to chat to you about again, maybe we could talk a bit more about Bitcoin mining at some point. But awesome, man. Great to chat with you.
Thank you, Almo. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to all of your supporters, man. It's going to be good to see you in a couple of months in Cape Town again.
Yeah, or hopefully I get to Namibia soon. So.
Cheers.
Awesome, man. Okay, cheers, man.
All right.